bristlecone pine trees, the oldest known living things in the world. They have existed in the southwestern United States for over 8,000 years. The oldest known living bristlecone pine is more than 4,600 years old. It germinated while the pre-Columbian peoples of America were first learning to cultivate maize. The winds of 2,000 years had carved it before this great Olmec head was sculpted. It was 4,100 years old when Ponce de Leon explored Florida and Hernán de Soto explored the Mississippi River. It was 4,400 years old when Pío Pico was governor of California. The bristlecones are tenacious, like their first human companions of the Americas. They know how to shut down their systems in dry spells. They survive by their stoicism, and they survive by their unusually strong resin, or pitch. This resin seals their wounds and prevents decay. They struggle to survive under triple jeopardy, in high, cold altitudes, in extremely poor soil, and with a minimum of rainfall. Our elderly Hispanics also struggle to survive under triple jeopardy, under the handicaps of poverty, old age, and minority status. The life of bristlecone pines has not been abundant. In many older trees, only a strip of bark conducts nutrition to the few living branches. Most of the tree is dead. And neither have their Hispanic companions in our land enjoyed abundant life. Like the bristlecones, they have endured by their age-old stoicism and by their resin, their age-old cultural values. Like the trees, their life is difficult, but unlike the trees, their life is short. Hispanic life expectancy in our country is only 55 to 59 years, in contrast to 71 for the Anglo population. Hispanics not only die earlier, they age earlier. They experience lower incomes and poorer health at an earlier age than Anglos. Their vigor is affected by the scarcity of their resources. Between the ages of 60 and 62, only 2% of Anglos feel old, but 35% of Hispanics feel old.
Are these Hispanics of the United States? Peruvians and Cubans, Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, Spaniards, Nicaraguans, Argentinians, over 20 million of them. They have been here for generations, or since yesterday. They come from different terrains and climates, from different racial and national heritages. But they share a common Spanish language and general Hispanic culture. Their commonalities are much more pervasive and important than their differences of diet, music, and style. Soon, Hispanics will be the largest minority group in our country. Right now, there are some 2 million older Hispanics the majority of whom were born outside the United States. A very high proportion of these older people speak only Spanish. What are the most serious problems of these people? According to the largest and most recent study of the Hispanic elderly, done by the National Association for Hispanic Elderly, people 55 years and older gave an overwhelming answer: health, income, and morale. A glance at their income will help explain their problems of health and morale. The older Hispanic is more than 2 times as apt to reside in poverty as a member of the total elderly population. Approximately 37% of them live below the poverty line. The type of past employment and the lack of knowledge of older Hispanics cause them to be underrepresented in Social Security and other programs that they are entitled to. In New York City, for example, only 50% of Spanish origin older people receive Social Security benefits. But what about the well-known Hispanic value of the extended family? Aren't elderly Hispanics living in their children's homes? The fact is that only 9.7% of all Spanish origin elderly in the United States live in extended family situations. 60% of the elderly live with their spouse, often elderly also. 30% live alone. Then what about financial aid from the family for the elderly who live apart from them? This is a problem because the proportion of Hispanic families in the lowest income brackets is double that of the population as a whole. 23% of Hispanic families live below the poverty line, as compared to only 9% of non-Hispanic families. The median income of Hispanic families is a third lower than that of non-Hispanic families. And Hispanic families are generally larger than those of the population as a whole. This means they have less money with which to support more people. When such a large proportion of a group is poor, obviously there cannot be much effective aid from one person to another. Thousands of older Hispanics are forced to work at difficult, low-paying jobs because they lack old age assistance. This in spite of their poor health. And what about their health? Studies have always shown that health is directly related to income, so we may assume that Hispanics have poorer health than the rest of the population. 85% of Anglos aged 45 to 54 rate their health status as good. Only 61% of Hispanics in the same age bracket rate their health as good, almost a fifth fewer. The most prevalent health problem of older Hispanics is arthritis, followed by high blood pressure. Diabetes is close behind, presumably because of high starch diets. Unfortunately, starches are more available to the poor than protein. Elderly Hispanics report that their first need is for medical care, and their second need is for food stamps. Among their health problems, they list inadequate food, lack of health insurance, difficulty in obtaining good health care or any care at all, need for dental work, lack of adequate aids such as glasses and dentures, physical limitations and handicaps, having to work even though ill, and problems of convalescence. Many of the elderly need a nurse or housekeeper, but cannot afford it. 51% of older Hispanics needed domestic help the last time they were sick and didn't get it. 12% needed dental work, which they did not get. 9% needed doctor services, which they did not get. 5% needed hospital care but did not get it. Since health problems are often related to nutrition, are elderly Hispanics taking advantage of free lunch programs? Some are. Many others cannot, for lack of transportation or lack of personal mobility. Thousands can no longer handle stairs, a major problem in New York City and Chicago. 18% of Hispanics 55 and older are too frail to ride the bus alone. Then what about driving to the nutrition center? That's a problem too. In East Los Angeles, for example, over half the households do not own a car. And even if they do have a car, half of all Hispanics 55 and older cannot drive alone. It would seem that home nutrition programs are a better solution for the elderly Hispanic. But there are long waiting lists for home-delivered meals. Without them, thousands of Hispanic elderly must either be put into homes or slowly waste away for want of adequate food. Transportation and red tape are only some of the reasons why older Hispanics are not using free or low-cost health services. There is a lack of bilingual personnel in clinics and other social agencies for the Spanish-speaking elderly, who cannot be expected to learn another language at their age. Too many service providers do not understand the Hispanic culture and frequently offend the dignity of their clients. And dignity is a precious part of the Hispanic culture. Hispanics perceive discriminatory attitudes and treatment on the part of social service providers, and they are correct. Studies clearly show biases against poor persons on the part of middle-class health and social service personnel. Over 37% of all elderly Hispanics in our country used no social services at all in 1979, and over 42% used only one service. Over 81% used two or fewer services. The neediest persons are the lowest users. 15% of all elderly Hispanics have no knowledge at all of social services available to them, including medical care, food stamps, hot meals, and consumer education. Far more bilingual media announcements of available social services are needed. It is evident that the majority of elderly Hispanics do not enjoy abundant life in our country. The elderly Hispanics share all the problems of the elderly in general. Loss of physical vigor, feelings of dependency and uselessness, poverty and all its consequences, including inadequate housing, loneliness and isolation, thoughts of death and fear of dying, and a gradual lack of caring about themselves because of old age. All this is burden enough. But in addition, the Hispanic elderly may endure the sorrow of having some of their loved ones in a distant country, including children and grandchildren. of not being able to communicate with their English-speaking grandchildren in this country, of being part of a largely unwelcome minority. They may suffer anxiety over their loved ones trapped in countries undergoing oppression and violence, and especially for political refugees, heartache over the condition of their country.
The Hispanic elderly are in need of many services to which they have a right, services which the majority take for granted in the United States. Most of all, they are in need of acceptance on the part of this nation of immigrants. Far greater social and economic justice for the Hispanic elderly must not be delayed. In less than 60 years, the elderly group will have nearly doubled as a share of the total population of the United States. The increase of elderly Hispanics will be even more dramatic. What kind of an inheritance will millions of these young people have tomorrow? Surely the elderly are their finest heritage. The life of the entire community is richer for the gift of the Hispanic elderly. Unless they are recognized as valuable, unless they are nurtured, the next generation will be impoverished. The living part of the bristlecone pine piggybacks on the large area of older dead wood on the tree, wood that died because of an inhospitable environment and lack of nutrition. We in America must create a social and economic environment in which we can all have our just share. We must want it, we must dream it, we must achieve it.